We have some great news to share with you here today. Pastor James Coates, someone who you're probably well aware of by this point, is about to be released from prison. And it comes just 2 days after I personally asked the Minister of Justice about this atrocious, egregious violation of religious freedoms in Alberta. Check out what I asked him. Pastor James Coates, could you comment on his case? He's in prison for something that's not really even punishable by prison. Will the government call for his release?
As you know, I can't, being the Justice Minister, I can't speak to ongoing court litigation involving Pastor James Coates. That said, I think none of us wanted to see this at this particular point in time. At the end of the day, the judicial process have got to take its course. It's unfortunate. This is not what I would want to see.
Now, I'm not going to take credit for his release. There's been a lot of people on this file that have done great work, from my colleague Sheila Gunn-Reid and all of the Rebel crew members who have been at the Grace Life Church every Sunday for the past couple months, trying to make sure that the other side of the story is shared, trying to make sure that the church and the pastors and the families of the congregants and the pastor have the opportunity to share their story. The mainstream media wants to vilify them. The mainstream media didn't care about the fact that Pastor James Coates was thrown in jail, that his religious freedoms were trampled on. They didn't care that this was an international story. In fact, one of the members of this story is about to appear on Tucker Carlson in the next few days. This is a story of epic proportions that the mainstream media just didn't bother once to ask not just Jason Kenney, but the Minister of Justice in Alberta. It took me from Rebel News driving all the way up to Edmonton, going to the legislature and standing outside of the Legislative Assembly doors waiting for the Minister of Justice to walk by so that I could ask that question. And it's not just us that have been fighting for Pastor James Coates as well. It's been the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, and they actually released this press release. They're representing Pastor Coates in court. Here's what they had to say. The Justice Centre expects Pastor Coates will be released from jail in the coming days without any conditions pending his May 3 to 5 trial in provincial court. The pastor of Grace Life Church near Edmonton has been incarcerated in the Edmonton Remand Centre for a month since February 16th. It is expected that Pastor Coates could be released from jail as early as Friday, March 19th. Now, John Carpe, the head of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, was obviously outraged by this case, and here's what he had to say personally about this. The condition that Pastor Coates effectively stopped doing his job as a pastor by adhering to unscientific and unconstitutional public health restrictions should never have been imposed on him by the RCMP or by the court. We are hopeful that he will finally be released from jail without conditions and can resume pastoring Grace Life Church. Now, strangely enough, we had a whole campaign planned out, and the day before we were about to unveil a massive billboard on the side of the Queen Elizabeth Highway. I was just standing right next to it yesterday trying to start a crowdfunding campaign so that we could put up a message to convince the provincial government just 2 days after I asked the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General Casey Medu a question about this. Well, finally, we see some action. Now, the charges haven't all been dropped. There's still one more charge that he has to face in court in May. And I think that that charge should be dropped as well. The Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms agrees, and they're going to be fighting on his behalf in court. If you want to continue sending a message, even though he's been released from jail, if you want to send the message to these Crown prosecutors that his case should be dropped completely and they should apologize to the pastor for putting him in prison for a month, trampling on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, please sign our petition at freepastorjames.com. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks as always for your help and the pressure that you may have put on the government yourselves, on any cabinet ministers or MLAs. They should have released this pastor weeks ago. They should have never arrested him. They should have never have charged him. But finally, we're on the other side of this story. Finally, he might get some justice. We'll have to see in May when he appears in court. For Rebel News, I'm Keean Bexte. Like I said, please go to freepastorjames.com. Check out the full story if you haven't already, and sign our petition to let Jason Kenney know that all of these charges should be dropped immediately.